let's give it a simple example. Let's say you're addicted to something. I don't know. Yeah, you drink too much, or I don't know, whatever it is. You watch porn, or like you have this addiction,
right?
And you know that it's an addiction because because you can't control it, right? Because you try to, and then you can't, and then it kind of pulls you. And so that's a principality. That's also a principality. That is, it's a pattern in reality that is cosmic. It's cosmic because you're not the only person with that addiction, dude.
Yeah.
There are other people that also have that addiction. It means that's not an idiosyncrasy to you. It's not just relative to you. It's an actual real pattern that exists in the world, but in which you are participating. And that you are not only participating, but that by engaging in these bad habits and these bad behaviors, you are feeding it. You're sacrificing your time and your attention to this pattern, and you're making it stronger in the world because you're a branch of it. You're a body for it. You're a tool for it to appear in the world, right? So you don't need like a Ghostbusters way of thinking. Like it doesn't have to be something like a woo-woo science fiction thing. This is just cognitive reality of how things work. So that principality has a cosmic version of it. It has to, because it doesn't just exist in you. It exists in all these other people. And so that's a demon, and you can encounter it, and you can be possessed by it, and you can be a tool for it to spread in the world. Like, have you ever met someone who has a bad habit and is obsessed with getting other people to participate in that very bad habit? Why?
Yeah.
They even know that it's bad for them. Like if you pry them a little, you know that it's destructive, but nonetheless, they want to get that young kid to smoke, and they secretly want to get these teenagers to drink or to do whatever it is that they do. And so they're a tool of this demon in the world. It's a real thing.
I'm just getting flashbacks because it's so true. Like when people are so entrenched in their bad habit, let's say whatever, weed, drugs, and I've had these experiences where you're like, no, I don't want any more. It's like, just have one, man. Just have one. Like they're like, and they even kind of physically transform into that kind of orc demonic, like, just have one. Come on, man. Just have one. And it's like, dude, no. And then as soon as you try to break away from their lifestyle, then they get like triggered and inflamed and like, what do you mean? What? You think you're better than me? You know, and it's like, whoa, man. I just didn't want to do drugs. That's all.
Yeah. No, but you've got you've understood the right pattern. And so you can understand that, let's say, think about this. So there are principalities in the world that are trying to get your attention, right? There are some that are light and there are some that are dark. And, like all the good things, like loving your neighbor, helping your friends, being good to your spouse, taking care of your children. There are all these light patterns in the world, and they are trying to kind of get your attention, and you want to give your attention to them. And then you have all these darker ones that are there as well. Now you can understand these patterns as just abstract patterns in the world, but we are conscious beings, like we are persons. And those patterns end up coagulating into something like persons as well. And so that's why in the same way that I encounter you, a pattern thing in front of me, right? You're just a pattern, but I encounter your face and your behavior as a pattern being. That is the same for these higher principalities, and so you can, like I said, you can encounter them. They can manifest themselves to you sometimes in a more immediate way, depending on people's sensibilities. But even if they don't, you can still understand that they're acting on you. And you like, let's say, I don't know if you kind of free yourself from a bad habit. Let's say you have this bad thing that you're dealing with, and you're able to free yourself from it. And then when you're kind of free from it, you're even like, who is that guy who was doing that? You almost don't recognize yourself. Like you look at yourself and you're like, who's that guy that was doing this? Like, how is it that he was doing this? And you're like, you almost like you don't even, there's something about it that you can't even you can barely recognize it. Of course, until the day that you're like in a weak spot. And then all of a sudden you don't know what's going on. And it's like, you wake up and you're like back in the pattern, and you're thinking, how did I get back here? I thought I was out of this thing. Like I thought I wasn't in there anymore. So how did I fall back into this
wake
thing?
back into Satan's den.
Exactly.
I said I'd never do this again, and you're waking up with like 10 hookers around you, drugs. So you're like, man.
And you're like, what? Like, how did I get here? Exactly. And so like, but these experiences are real, like everybody's had them. And so we can understand them just in terms of psychology, but they're more than that. And you know, ancient cultures and Christian culture was able to recognize that this is not just idiosyncratic to you. These have objective reality, these patterns, and there are ways to deal with them religiously. And that something even like exorcism can actually have an effect on you in the same way that a coach. Why is it that a coach who speaks to you before a game would make you better at playing basketball? Well, why does it bother you that maybe someone with authority with spiritual authority could affect you in a way that would free you at least somewhat from these different bad patterns that you have? So there are all these ways to kind of be able to look back and see again these rituals, these practices that we see in ancient culture, and just see how they're totally coherent. They're not strange the way people told us they were. There are the angels of the right hand, and then there are the angels of the left hand. The angels of the left hand of God are basically the demons. And the demons think that they're doing their own thing, but they don't realize that they're not, that they're actually ultimately doing the will of God in kind of showing us our own, let's say, weaknesses and manifesting these weaknesses and this darkness in the world so that that darkness can then be covered by God, ultimately in the final image, you could say.